On this episode of Newt's World, I'm providing my first update from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The fact is that this is a remarkable moment and something that, if I had talked to you last Friday, I could never, ever have imagined. The first big impact to realize about this convention is that this is a giant family reunion. Thousands and thousands of volunteers and activists from all over the country, many of whom have been doing this for 20 or 30 years, come together in this great moment of reorganizing and renewing the Republican Party. And all of a sudden, on Saturday night, they were watching their candidate, their champion, the person that they had invested so much time and money and effort and so much faith and hope in, Donald J. Trump, get shot. I can tell you personally, I was watching it live. I've known Trump for over 30 years. I'm watching a personal friend get shot on television, live. It was horrifying. He then, of course, responded by standing straight up, putting his fist up in the air, and then yelling, fight, fight, fight. And then he switched to USA, USA. And that became an iconic moment for his supporters. The emotional bond, the sense of commitment, the thrill that he survived, I described it as providential because I think it was. Go back and look at that scene. He has turned his face to look up to a very large screen, making a point about illegal immigration. And he turns back to face the audience at the exact moment that the bullet arrives. If he had turned back 3 seconds later, the bullet would have hit him in the head. But because he turned back, the bullet missed his head and hit his ear. I'm told that it did not do too much damage. He's even hopeful that the bandage will be off by Thursday. When you look at that and you realize this was something which Minister Youssef in Atlanta told my good friend Randy Evans, that this had to be providential. To be this close to being dead and not have it hit was astonishing. I used that term providential on Fox News with Sean Hannity later on that evening. I'm told that it went worldwide because it's the only way you could explain what happened. So by Monday, you have this deep sense across everybody who's at the convention that we are participating in something historic. And it's something that I could identify with, both because Callista and I had made movies about Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. And when they met, President Reagan and Pope, now Saint John Paul II, they actually spent time talking about what was their mission, since both of them had been shot and both of them had survived. And I have a hunch that some of that's going through and affecting Donald Trump right now. That he has a sense that God has saved him and that he has a duty to rise to that occasion and to do what's right for America. And you could see it Monday night when he came into the convention hall. He was more subdued, I think more reflective, more willing for other people to have the spotlight than I've ever seen. The crowd reaction was just astonishing, beyond anything I could have dreamed of. So the first big story, of course, this will always be the convention that occurred at the time that President Trump survived an assassination attempt, and that's what it was. It was an assassination attempt. It was astonishing that CNN reported initially as Trump helped from stage after fall, which was just such blatant dishonesty that even by CNN standards, it was pretty amazing. The second thing about this convention is, of course, the very first day is adopting the rules, recognizing the delegates, adopting the platform. The rules were adopted pro forma. Nothing had really changed. The platform, I want to take just a minute to say, everybody should read this platform. It was reduced from about 37,000 words to about 4,000. Everything in this platform was personally approved by Trump. He read through it. He edited it. He vetoed certain things. And if you want a clear sense of what Donald Trump hopes to achieve as president, this platform is far and away the easiest to read, the clearest, and the most comprehensive statement of where Trump wants to take America. It's a remarkable document, and I think at the presidential level, it is comparable to what we did with the contract with America. So I really strongly recommend the platform. It was adopted unanimously without dissent which in itself was a sign of tremendous organization and of the moral and psychological leadership that Trump now has over the Republican Party. Then, of course, it was time for nominations. This will not come as a shock to anybody. Donald J. Trump was nominated, unanimously supported by the convention. And then it came time for the second nomination, which, of course, is the vice president, which I'll talk about more in a minute. They put J.D. Vance of Ohio in to be nominated. He had no opposition. He won decisively. By the end of the morning session, they'd adopted the rules, recognized the delegates, adopted the platform, nominated the president, and nominated the vice president. Let me talk for a minute or two now about the choice of J.D. Vance, which I can tell you was not totally clear, even Monday morning. I think the president was really weighing it. He regarded it as the first really big decision of his next presidency. He is deeply committed to three principles. One, to have a vice president capable of being president, because he recognizes, there's always a risk. Two, to have a vice president who shares his values and is willing to implement the MAGA doctrine and the platform which I just described. And three, to nominate somebody who is young enough and energetic enough that they would have a chance to win in 28 and 32, because Trump believes, and I think he's right, it's going to take 3 consecutive terms to complete the scale of change that we have to complete in order to get America back on the right track. He had a lot of advice for some very, very good people. Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, is a superb executive, was at one time the vice president of Microsoft. He gets along very well with Trump, and he would have been an acceptable but not particularly an exciting choice. He'll probably end up in the cabinet in a significant role. Marco Rubio, I think, really was the person who came closest to becoming the nominee other than Vance. Rubio, of course, is a U.S. senator, was a tremendous Speaker of the House in Florida, ran against Trump in 2016. I know that Trump thinks very highly of him. I wouldn't be shocked to see Rubio end up as Secretary of State. And literally, up until Monday morning, they were all in contention. And Trump was really trying to weigh the decision. And the reason was simple. There is a group in the party who very strongly wanted J.D. Vance. And one of the key people in that group was Donald Trump Jr. But in addition, there were very smart people who represent the heart of the MAGA movement intellectually. And they all felt that J.D. represented the energy, the drive, and the knowledge that would be so important to both implement Trump's policies in the next 4 years, because the vice president, as president of the Senate, can play a major role in trying to move things through the House and Senate. And then second, they felt J.D. Vance was a true innovator and leader who believed in the basics of the Trump movement and who would be capable of carrying that message on for the next generation. I'm going to spend some time in a future podcast just talking about Vance. Until I was forced by Trump's choice, I really hadn't paid enough attention to him. And the more you get to see him and know about him, it's a very interesting American story. He's going to be a very important person. I should point out that he is the same age, 39, that Richard Nixon was, 39. Dwight Eisenhower, who was in his 70s, picked him. Trump, who's in his 70s, picked J.D. Vance. And as I watched them last night when they came to the floor, it was very telling. Trump came to the floor quietly, sat and listened for well over an hour to a variety of speakers, sat next to Vance. And I think a senior mentor, somebody who's done a great deal, who's already been president, who's already been through the process of one of the greatest comebacks in American history, and this young, new, eager and enthusiastic person who is prepared to learn from and be mentored by the President of the United States. So I think it's going to be a very interesting team. And in a future podcast, I'm going to talk at considerable length about J.D. Vance. I can tell you that the people I've been running into, and I've been all over the place, frankly, taking pictures and talking to folks and speaking to different delegations, there is really positive, happy. People are so grateful that Trump survived. They're so thrilled that the assassination attempt failed. There's a feeling here I've never seen, even in the great 1984 Reagan renomination in Dallas. I've never seen the enthusiasm, the intensity, the emotional energy that we have here in Milwaukee. And I think the rest of the week is going to be fascinating, and I'll be reporting to you about it.